Let's go for the actual slow. Europa, natural
Greetings, humanity, and I'll have to mute that on my other device while I do the rest of the intro. Welcome to Europa Natural Law, which is a round table, although it's more of a triangular table so far this evening. Transmission dedicated to healing the madness, badness, and sadness plaguing our beautiful, bountiful world. Through regaining our sanity, reclaiming our inborn sovereignty, and honoring our inherent responsibility, we can improve reality. I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for Beauty from Devonshire, Albion. I write, speak, and sing for freedom, reason, and beauty. And you can find all of my links at nemojones.com. And let's introduce the people who are joining me tonight. So we have over this way.
Bonjour tout le monde. Comment ça va, les gars? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a? Out here in France, excuse my French, right? Derek Rollicelli, Awakening Mind, Dissolving the Divide, and the Francophone Connection, La Connexion, in proper natural law introspection. nattylaw.com, too. Jared, what's good, man?
Hey, Jared.
Guys,
Give me he. Hey, yeah. How are you doing? Where? So it's Jared Adam. Is that right?
You're right. Having troubles with my mic. You just please call me just Jared.
Yeah.
That's just you could say my spiritual name.
Cool. And where are you joining us from?
Phoenix, Arizona, the land of America, I guess.
Cool. We're getting like only half a face for some of the time at the moment. I don't know if that's resolvable, but yeah,
Does that help?
That's better. Yeah. And so, as you're new to the show, before we get into the topic, would you like to just give a little introduction of yourself and how you came to be here? What's brought you to natural law? Basically, your sort of journey. You know why? Yeah, how you think you were chosen, as it were.
Well, thanks, Neems, for asking the question and providing the platform for natural law. Greatly appreciate what you're doing for everyone to educate people. And I'm here because my conscience today wouldn't let me not come. I wanted to not come because I was feeling kind of chickenish, and I like to support people from behind, but I feel like my conscience was telling me that that you have something to add, and even though you may not have it as solidly as, say, Chris Nelson or Mark Passio or others, that still doesn't mean that you don't have something to add and to contribute. And though my conscience may not be as developed as other people's, like, say, Chris Nelson or Mark Passio, I'm working every day at it. And so this is part of that rep to internalize natural law and to help bring it to other people in whatever way that I can. So I'm here out of responsibility to my own conscience. So thanks for having me.
Great. I think that's what brings us all here. I don't think any of us feel like we're ready, really. You know, we're just kind of feeling that we have to get on with it and do what we can and improve on the job, as it were. So there's a sort of technical note, which is the weather's crazy here today. While we were getting ready to come on line, I actually dropped power a couple of times here for a few seconds, and of course that knocked out the Wi-Fi. So when it happened, I'm out for, like, if it were to happen again, which is possible, I don't know, I will disappear for a minute, but that would be why. Okay, so on with the show, with the topic, which is order followers. And as I was kind of getting ready, I kind of thought, well, really, it could be, and it really covers also order following. It's really both, because I think it's to grow up in this world as it is, and to not have, like, caught a little bit of order following ourselves is nigh on impossible. And it's very difficult to do lots of things in this world, or very stressful, should we say, to do a lot of things in this world without, to some degree, going along with the rules as they are laid out for us. So as we do most weeks on the Telegram group that this show evolved out of, which is open for you to follow. There's a link in the description if you'd like to join us there. But we have a discussion, or lots of ongoing discussions, but usually we post a question about the show theme for the week. So my answer to the question, what is an order follower? And I just realized I'm looking at a question from last week. I've posted it here, I clicked it here somewhere. Oh, where's it gone? Oh, sorry about this. Okay, I've completely lost it in this document. All right, so that's fine. I'll come back to that, but so I'll just freestyle on it. Order followers, really, it's, again, I know I say this most weeks, but it's such a huge subject, because really, without the class of order followers, the control system is unsustainable. It's really about this class of people, and that's really, of course, we all carry some aspect of this psychology within us, I think, but there is a specific class of people whose designated role in society is to follow orders according to the structure of society as we've inherited it. And it's quite a sort of unique class of people, and it's been commented by others that it's quite a insular class. For example, I don't really know anyone within that class. I don't know any policemen. I don't know any people in the military. I do have a relative in the military, but sort of fairly kind of distant. It's kind of like within its own sort of little niche, and that's a big problem, because really these arguably are the people that we really need to talk to about natural law, and about conscience, and about responsibility, because one of the most lethal things that people can say and have said historically, literally lethal and genocidal, is, I was just doing my job. I was just following orders. It's such a huge problem in the world. I mean, it's sort of, it can seem almost insurmountable, that how we can really begin to address this, because, as I said, it seems like this class that's almost completely separate from the rest of society. And this is a class of people who act within, they really do not act within they're sort of lost within. This is how I'll try and find my thing that I wrote, but this is along the lines that I was getting at, is that it's they're kind of lost within this game of domination and submission, because they're dominated from above and they dominate below. in terms of the structure. So that's a kind of like introductory kind of thought, a couple of introductory thoughts for me. So yeah, I'll hand it on from there, and we can keep rolling. So whoever wants to jump in.
All right, sure. Well, let's lay down a primer, because folks might not get the gist of where we're coming at, in regards to the term order followers, order following, and how when people are operating from that, it's not necessarily operating from a place of consciousness. And we're talking about like law enforcement and the like the chain of command within the military industrial complex. That type of modality is passed on to many different other industries, kind of like in the hospital domain. There's still a chain of command and all this stuff. There's superiors, there's a hierarchy, if you will. And to kind of also put things in a more broad perspective, when we're born, our parents, we're following the orders of our parents. So we're conditioned to different degrees, as Fred from the Libercast mentioned, in regards to order following is a matter of degrees and different positions and fields. And there are, positive aspects of order following. Like, okay, like your parents are giving you an order. They're the parents, the stewards of your well-being growing up, when kids are nescient and not fully knowing themselves and the environment around them and all that stuff. And just like the objective reality and morality of things and distinguishing right from wrong. But are the parents conscious? And, what are their fields of work and this and that? And yeah, whatever jobs and careers, do they have to follow specific guidelines and business models and mission statements and all these things that, for a well-oiled machine to work, yeah, people need to kind of fall in line and do what they're told. But is that environment based on, morality? That's what we have to ask ourselves in regards to order following. And so when we think about law enforcement, they're enforcing these, man-made laws that a lot of times are, a lot more miss than on hit in regards to aligning to, the golden rule, morality, natural law, and that kind of stuff. So we see a lot of man-made laws being enforced, and it's basically kind of what we touched upon last two live streams in regards to property rights, like our bodily autonomy. It's always being encroached on and violated because the order followers and law enforcement folks are not respecting our bodily autonomy, whether it be through taxation. We're thieved upon, percentage of our labor, that kind of stuff, or taxed upon the place we live at, what we buy, the whole fucking nine, right? So there's a lot to consider with order following and the degrees of immorality that it falls on. And it's quite the clusterfuck of conundrums when we put it all into perspective and trying to sift between, the good aspects and like the pile of shit of bad aspects. And, you're listening to a man who's been to jail like 5 fucking times. So it's easy for a person like me who hasn't like processed and alchemized these things to hold a huge fucking grudge against law enforcement and being targeted by them and all that shit, But in the end, we're all humans, and humans can be programmed to extreme degrees. And so this is where we fall into like the dominators, like you mentioned, and like this the toxic masculinity, and the toxic patriarchy. That's kind of falling in the lines of, the imbalanced masculine of, violating people's rights, not respecting the divine feminine of the non-aggression, non-violent principle. So I'll pass it off, Jared, if you want to take it from there.
There we go. Sorry, my my phone is one of these cheap phones, and I have to hit it like 3 times, and then sometimes it goes whatever. My mic is kind of slow to react to when I push it anyway. So sorry about that
All good,
awkward
brother.
silence. Yeah, you said a lot of really important things there, and the degrees of order following and what is in line with natural law and what is not. And so let's start with parents, like you said, right? And I think, I was thinking about this, internalizing the difference between a parent as a guardian versus a parent as an authoritarian. And parents, objectively, should be trying to teach their children how to be sovereign and how to be adults and be of internal integrity. Unfortunately, there's a lot of parents that don't understand that. And so instead, they become authoritarians because that's what they were dominated with prior. And so they do the same thing to their kids. But even parents in natural law should be guardians and nothing else. If you don't allow children to make mistakes, then they're going to do it at a much greater degree later on in life and hurt themselves and other people even more than if they, don't learn to touch the hot stove on their own. Like, hey, don't do that. I told you not to do it. You did it anyway. Like I could put a big barrier around the hot stove, and then that might just make them want to break through the barrier. It's like I told you. So degrees and parents and the immorality of order following, like a police officer or whatever. And so, at the heart of the whole, what is an order follower, that is outside of natural law are and I think of them kind of like insects. If you think of like an army ant or whatever, insects have a lower form of consciousness that are literally programmed to follow orders of the queen or the whatever, and they do it without questioning their consciousness. And that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about order followers. We're talking about people who don't ask themselves, like, hey, is this right? And to talk to their own conscience, their own internal objective understanding of what right and wrong is. Like, if this person does not open up their window on a traffic stop, and I can still hear them, but they won't give me their license, and they've gone over what they call the speed limit, which is just an ordinance of their corporation, but they didn't hurt anyone, do I then have a right as a police officer to break their window, drag them out of the car, beat them a little bit, maybe break their arm, break their face on the ground, and then haul them off to jail because they didn't give me their license? They didn't hurt anyone, and now they're not complying with the order to give me your license, or whatever it is. And so this is what we're talking about when we're talking about order followers. We're talking about people who think they have a right to hurt you because they've been given a special right by a corporation or a group of people that is an unnatural right, that doesn't exist in reality, that you never have a right to hurt somebody because they're not giving you their license. You don't, never. So that kind of violence, they don't internalize in their conscience that they've done something wrong. And so these are the people who have no developed conscience, as Chris Nelson would say. And I've learned so much from Chris, and please check out Chris Nelson's work. He's such an amazing researcher, and I'm so grateful for his work because he's helping me to develop my conscience into a true conscience. Because at this point right now, my conscience is underdeveloped. I mean, I am learning, and I think we're all at different stages of developing our conscience to understand the objective difference between right and wrong, and then to be able to say exactly what it is and why. And an underdeveloped conscience would be something to where we know it's not right to hurt somebody, but we don't know what we've done exactly wrong or why it's wrong. So I think most people fall somewhere between the intuitive conscience of knowing what's right and wrong, but they don't have the fully developed conscience to know exactly what rights have been violated, what property rights have been violated, and why it's wrong to do whatever it is. And so, anyways, I love Chris's work, and so that's order followers in a nutshell for me. And it's different than parents. Parents should be guardians always. They should never be an authoritarian to a child, because that means that they don't learn. They don't grow up to be sovereign adults, sovereign humans that can live and side by side with other people without hurting other people. So, but unfortunately, we have a lot of children teaching children to dominate, and then that goes into the whole education system. And Nemo, I hope, or Neems, I hope you had a chance to find your document, because I know you took some time to think about, the words. And so, anyway, I don't want to just keep rattling on.
That's good stuff. I did find it. Yeah, it's actually quite short, but I will read what I wrote, because yeah, as you say, I did put a bit of time into it. So this was my thoughts on this. The extent to which an individual can be identified as an order follower corresponds with the extent to which they are identified with and lost in the ego game of domination and submission. This will correlate with the abandoning of connection with the higher self and a feigning of the absence of inherent sovereignty and responsibility. So obviously there's a lot in there. It's very sort of intense, a lot of concepts, but I think the last part is really worth focusing on for people who aren't new to these concepts. So, and this is really my perspective on sovereignty. Is that, you can't, sovereignty is not, it is inherent, it is inalienable, it is immutable. You are, no one does rule over you. You are above rule. That's basically the meaning of sovereignty. That's the spiritual reality of you as a manifested being. That's just the fact of it. So everything that is conditioned, and we've had some comments, someone saying obedience and submissiveness are imbued in the cult. Yeah, they've spelled culture, cult, for emphasizing cult. But obedience and submissiveness are imbued in the culture, and that's so true. But it's both. So it's like we learn that, just as a designated order follower, or someone that is this kind of cog in the machine, takes orders from above and dominates below. It's the same thing. We all learn this pattern. It's if you think about it, it's the sort of it's the hierarchy. It's inherent in the hierarchical idea. It's inherent in the triangle, the pyramid. It's like that. The power is at the top and it filters down, and everyone is dominated from above and dominates below. So it's kind of fitting into that structure. But it's really important, I think, to sort of emphasize and to remember that this act, this is how I see it, is that really most of humanity is involved in this, whether you think of it as a game or an act of, so it's feigning the absence of inherent sovereignty. It's kind of like, oh, I couldn't help it. Oh, I had to follow orders. Oh, I needed to do this because of to feed my family or to survive or whatever. It's like, well, what natural law is about is what the understanding of natural law. It's tough, it's really tough. The more that you understand it, the more that you realize it's about morality is more important than my very life. That's what it actually comes down to, than my very safety, my personal safety, this actual manifestation. Morality is actually more important for me as a spiritual being. that's really what true understanding of natural law is about. And it's hard to even say that, when you're really contemplating like what that really means, and we've all had this kind of these interactions with order followers, people in, dominating kind of positions. Hey, Yvonne, how you doing?
Hey, sorry I'm late.
Okay, well, yeah, we've all had these kind of interactions, and I'm sure we're all kind of familiar with this, that feeling. I mean, even just seeing an order follower come around the corner and you're sort of like, ooh, tighten up, it's like, am I going to get basically harassed by this person who thinks they have rights to do that to me, to take my time, potentially, whatever, like lock me in a cage, whatever it is, it's like it's this awful thing that it does go right back to early childhood. It's like, is it really, school is just a small version of the same thing, in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, oh, here comes the teacher, it's like, well, it's obviously not, and not a pleasant way. It's not what you want, is it? If you think about humanity, it's like, it should be, yay, here comes the teacher. He's going to teach us stuff, not like, the authority figure is going to dominate us and can punish us in like, crazy ways, like making it, locking us in a room, for hours at a time or whatever it is. Real serious punishments, which kids go through, it's like that, I mean, it's a very small kind of version of it, but solitary confinement, which is a common punishment in schools in this country, okay, it's only maybe an hour or whatever at a time, but solitary confinement is one of the worst tortures there is, actually, when it, when it's really extended, it's literally considered to be one of the most harmful tortures that there is. And it's the same thing when you put someone in a cage. I mean, that's what you're doing to them. And sorry, it's a distraction, but it's just something that people don't realize, that there's guys that have had really bad physical torture and solitary confinement, and they come out and they say it was the solitary confinement was worse than everything else, and people don't realize this, and people just talk about it in a blasé way because it happens. We're so used to it as a thing, like, the Australian guy, the WikiLeaks guy, oh, he was in solitary confinement for a few months or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, that's torture, that's what that is, by the way. So it's just an aside, but I mean, anyway, so I won't go on too much, but there's a few things. So Yvonne, hey, how are you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Apologies for being late. I've been traveling. So yeah, but Nemo, that's a good place to pick up. You're talking about like the schooling system being the start of the child experience that that authority and the order following, because obviously at school I had plenty of experiences where I didn't conform to what I felt was an injustice that was going on at any given time, and I was prepared to take whatever punishment. But what I found is internally that builds up a real attitude towards anyone that is like a perceived authority that comes towards you, and that can be a real divide and rule feeling as well. I was just listening, Derek, to what you put up on the chat today with your channel with Leslie when you were interviewing the ex-cop.
Good old Daniel Arnold, the spiritual anarchist. Hell
yes, yeah, the ex-copper, and it really made me think, like the state of our the divide and rule, because one question it brought up in me was, well, there has to be in order to reach out to these order followers, there has to be a bridge between the people that don't want to be following these orders anymore, and the people that are still implementing these orders. So I kind of feel as though I have to kind of meet them halfway. I have to get past my attitude towards them, like my anger at being, I would say wronged during school. I took loads of punishment that had a massive effect on my self-esteem. The hands up, it was not justified at all. I was just asking simple questions sometimes, and it wasn't. Anyway, so yeah, I think there has to be, on both sides of the coin, a meeting point. There has to be a meeting point. And it really did make me think, Derek, of, obviously my background is health. And, maybe I should collate some questions and answers and go and have a chat with some people in the medical profession. Maybe I should go and ask simple questions, And
Yeah, especially when there's so much order following going on within the medical industry,
Yeah, of course, yeah. And I'm sure probably 90% of the people that go into that particular profession have gone in there with a good motive or a good heart. Some people have gone in there because their parents have told them that it's a really good profession to go into because it's good money. Some people have done that. But I know nurses that, like say during the lockdown, they weren't happy with what was actually going on, and carers left their job because they wouldn't take the jab. But inherently in their heart, they're carers. Do you get what I mean? And it's they've gone back into the industry now, but there is this undercurrent there. They're on edge all the time because they don't know when the next lockdowns come in. But I've had ideas in the past. There's nothing wrong with people starting there that feel that strongly to start their own industry of caring up. So if anything ever happens like that again, then they will not be ever put in that position again. And I suppose if someone is a copper out there, and they genuinely went into that profession with a passion to protect, then start up your own thing and go out and protect people in other ways. They don't have to be following man-made laws, I'll shut up for a little.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I mean, it's not cool what you're alluding to. In my current girlfriend quit the hospital arena after like working there for like 25, 30 fucking years. Because of since the dawning of the Rona and the lockstep and all this stuff, and like the higher up organizations like the World Health Organization. I don't know about health, if you ask me, but like they're setting certain mandates. The man is on a date with fucking slavery with that shit and other protocols or whatever the fuck that they the lower downs have to follow those orders, right? So yeah, and we could take this all the way back to hospital, les hospitaliers, Knights of Malta type of shit, in regards to what I mentioned before with the military industrial complex, kind of sharing a similar chain of command with that. And if you want to take it further, in regards to what I said with the dominators and the imbalanced masculine, you take the caduceus of the symbol for pharmakia, right? You have the Hermes rod with the wings on top with the double coiled snake, right? But if you look at some pharmacies, there's only one snake, and a lot of times it'll be on the left side, and so that's that masculine imbalance to the allopathic assholes out there, and negating the feminine homeopathic aspects of holistic health. So they're following the orders of the draconian dubious needlecraft and all that fucking bullshit, right? And yeah, like my woman sidestepped that, and she's doing acupuncture and hypnotherapy and that kind of stuff. She was joining a group, and I was going to join with them and work in this beautiful little chateau near Aix-en-Provence. But guess what? There's like supposed to be a holistic center, yet the main people at the helm are working with motherfucking Pfizer. And there's one of the head managers gets 5,000 euros a pop just for signing a chemotherapy fucking inscription for people. That's not fucking holistic. So there's a lot of shit that's under the guise of something that's good, but it can be co-opted, and that sucks, right? So yeah, again, it's just violations against natural law and people's rights to bodily autonomy and just proper fucking health without the bullshit side effects, or the primary effects rather, right? Things to consider with that. So yeah, we're kind of grown up into these conditioned things where we trust the experts and all that stuff, but behind the scenes they're following orders from some other draconian dictates and all that shit, right? Unfortunately. But like if you're working in a restaurant and you have to follow the orders of like taking orders from customers and having to follow the orders of a chef or whatever the fuck, like yeah, of course there's things that like that's not a big deal. It's not causing harm to anyone. It's providing value and food for people, whatever the fuck, right? So yeah, like props to Dan Arnold, because he's trying to reach out to many military and law enforcement and stuff, and trying to speak to them as human beings and letting other people know, especially in like the anarchist movement where they really loathe law enforcement and order followers and all that shit, to just recognize that these people are still human. Maybe not all of them, but like, are we not going to have somewhat of a compassionate door to allow open for redemption and repentance, and people to flip the script on like Daniel Arnold? He used to be an order follower, but what is he doing now? He's educating people on natural law and getting other of his ex-comrades out of that system, right? And that's a great thing, because people don't want to be stuck below 32 degrees with that pole ice, right? Police. And it's funny talking about cults, because you look at, and Nemo, you mentioned this in the beginning, of how like a lot of police officers don't mingle with the public outside of their jobs. They kind of stick to their own in a sense, or live more private lives. They got their families, and you don't really see them or hear much about them at all. I don't even know where they go shopping or out to restaurants, or like but some of them are literally in cults and stuck in like the lower degree Blue Lodge and other type of probably inverted Masonic groups and lodges. You just Google search images of police badges, especially in America, and you'll find a lot of Freemason symbols on that shit. What does it all mean, and why are they in cahoots on that level? And you don't really see that with other stuff. And by the way, there are the other, I wouldn't say law enforcement, but firefighters. They have to go through a lot of training and stuff, and they're not enforcing laws, and they're a service to humanity and the local environments and stuff. Yet they're funded through taxation that could be dealt with differently, right? But they're, as Daniel Arnold said, they're not knocking on people's doors or whatever the fuck, or stopping people in traffic, as someone mentioned before, and they're just there to save people, protect people, and that kind of stuff. So that's a interesting thing to differentiate and just contemplate. And yeah, like, we can be grateful to degrees of these people. And yeah, like Yvonne, as you mentioned, a lot of these people go into these fields wanting to help others, and that's a great thing. I mean, you look at the Hippocratic Oath in regards to healthcare and all this stuff, but yeah, they're unfortunately in a fucked up system that's kind of inverted, and it's more for profit than than actual health and curing people, right? Oh, that's, you know, shit, that saying that could get this video flagged in context, right? I mean, come on, what the fuck are they what are they protecting exactly with that, right? Things to consider. And yeah, we have fucking order followers on platforms that want to censor free speech, you know? Fuck that shit, you know? So anyways, it's just like, you know, like these bad justifications, use juris, you know, they're, you know, trying to make excuses or make reasoning off of logical fallacies of why the fuck they do what they do, because they're doing what they're told, and, you know, I'm just, you know, doing my job and whatever the fuck. And as Jared said, they're kind of operating from that R complex part of the brain, or even like insectoid like, if you will, of just following the queen bee, and that's what a bee, mon ami. Piton de merde, c'est nul. We could do better, right? So yeah, anyways, I'm gonna pass it off. If you want to take it away with that, Jared.
Yeah. You guys have all said so many important things that kind of harken back to where does this order following originate from? And again, I think it comes from parents who want to be authoritarians instead of being guardians, and then we stick them in a school system, and they get schooled real fast and hurt. Through a Prussian-based education system that is nothing more than creating more order followers. So when we look at Mark Paseo's work and all of you guys who've been in this for a long time, and people talking about getting quanta and getting numbers into the natural law spectrum so that people are educated in morality and they understand it. It keeps coming back to this for me because you guys brought these things up. You know, parents, education, police, healthcare, and, you know, redemption. Important that you said, Derek, about redemption, and then how do we transition into this redemption? Because, like you said, with your girlfriend, that she was invited to take part in this, and so were you. And here's what I would say, Derek, is your influence would be greater being a part of that, even if parts of it are in opposition to what we know to be holistic healthcare. Because let's put it this way, people have a right to be ignorant. They do. We can do what we can about you know, inviting more information, as far as like, oh, you know, if someone wants to take a vaccine and they think that's good for them, I'm going to say that's ignorant, but you may not. And so, but they have a right to believe that belief system that they have. And so what I would say, Derek, about what, you know, that kind of moral conundrum of do I participate in this, which I know is in part opposition to natural law or whatever, or into natural or into healthy practice of medicine. And I would say see it more in shades of gray, because you being a part of it means that you're going to influence in a good way people who, if you remove yourself from it, then they won't have your influence and they won't have that other perspective to think about it when they're at home or whatever. But going back to education being the most important thing, you know, people talking about getting numbers into natural law, I keep coming right back to the education, because every year, how many millions of children who go through a Prussian-based education system, which creates order followers. The teacher is the authority, and she tells them how to think. So we're creating order followers. We're fighting an uphill battle if we don't get into the education system somehow. All of you guys, of course, are doing the education among the adults and wherever you can, I'm sure, among the younger generations. But until we are able to change the education system, man, are we fighting, we're going upstream so much. And one more thing, back to the degrees of order following and a parent being a guardian as opposed to a parent being an authoritarian. When we're and this goes a little bit, and I, all right, I'm differentiating a little bit from some of the other content creators out there, in that I understand when people say that people are born sovereign. And here's the thing, I don't believe we are born sovereign. I believe that we are sovereign in consciousness, and I think that's what people mean, in that we don't share our consciousness with anyone else. There's nobody else inside of there, unless you're maybe possessed or something, but that can happen. But I mean, we are the owners of our consciousness, and we may communicate with source, where we're from, but the to think of us as sovereign from the time we are born, what that does in a negative way is it doesn't allow people to think of the education that is needed in order to be sovereign. So if we say that I'm born sovereign, well, that's just not true, because I'm born and I depend on my parents for survival. If I didn't have a caretaker, whether they were a parent or not, I would die. And that's not sovereign. And truly, it's the job of the parents to create a sovereign being at some point. Like, you're supposed to impart that to your children, is sovereignty. And that means inner authority and moral integrity. So if we say we're born sovereign, then what we're not honoring is the education and the process of becoming sovereign through, because we're born helpless. There's nobody can argue that. We're absolutely born helpless. And this is, I think, part of Source's plan. It's kind of a beautiful and really hard lesson for humanity, is that we need each other. We absolutely depend on each other to progress and collaborate for all of our well-being. And that's, I think, one of the lessons. I mean, think about it. If you were born a Draco, and I don't know a lot about Draco, I've never met one, but I do believe that they do exist, and did whatever. You might be born and you could be completely self-sufficient, meaning feed yourself, do all these things for yourself, and think about how your consciousness, and if you lived for 50,000 years, just say, think about how different your consciousness is, and how adept at human psychology and how to program people and all of these other things that are possible. But think about it, if you were born with the ability to completely take care of yourself, as opposed to a human who is dependent on other people, meaning we then trust people. We then depend on other people for good information. And so when we go to school and we are beat over the head with how to think, and then we go out into the world and we beat other people over the head with how to think, it's no wonder that humans are programmable and the way that they are. So yes, we have been born into a system that needs to change. We all recognize we've been born into slavery, and we recognize that the only way to change this system is through education of ourselves and our conscience, objective morality, and then to become internally sovereign and the authority over ourself and nobody else, because that is truly what sovereignty actually is authority over the self and mastery over the self without having to dominate or control anybody else. So but let's honor that by not saying that we're sovereign when we're born, by saying that we need to gain sovereignty through education, through each other, discussing things like we're doing today, so that we, like Yvonne, you were talking about, bringing up some kind of thing into the healthcare system, like a questionnaire. Like I constantly am thinking about ways to bring this conversation to other people, and avenues for conversation starters and ways to learn this myself. And I keep coming back to questions and then conversation starters. And I don't know, have you guys had any success stories, we'll call it, for bringing people to natural law? Would love to hear it if you do.
I could jump in on that, but I've so many things have come up that I want to respond to. So I'm going to go back a bit. So firstly, I just wanted to address the thing about sovereignty, because for me, if we look at the actual meaning of the word above rule, that's really what it breaks down to. That's a very simple kind of interpretation. And I would say that we are born above rule. It is inherent within us that we are not able in reality, in spiritual reality, to be ruled, and that it always comes down to an actual act of submission to to pretend that we are, but in spiritual reality we always maintain the freedom of choice, the freedom of will. We always maintain free will. So that's what I mean. So I understand what you're saying, but I would approach it differently, because I would say that it's the role, of course, that most people don't act in that way, and they're not raised in that way to understand that. But I would say I would just look at it a different approach. It's basically about the acknowledgement and the understanding of that, being educated and conditioned, basically, to understand that as we grow up. So that's kind of different perspective on that. But I wanted to go back to a couple of other things. So one is about just really simply, because I think maybe we skipped past this, but I was thinking while people were talking that, when we're talking about order followers, there's a very simple piece of this. You can really break it down to something very simple, which is basically about man's law and God's law, or whatever you want to call it: God's law, nature's law, moral law, the law, however you want to frame it, cosmic law, on and on, with so many different words to describe it. But really that's what it comes down to, and the exercise of conscience. Because I just wanted to say this, I know we all know this, but just to really be clear about what this is about, is like, if you are an order follower, this is the problem. This is the problem with following orders, is that actually you as an individual have responsibility. You are able to respond. You are able to exercise your conscience, and to understand the actual morality of a situation, and to act according to real, genuine, objective morality. And what order following is all about is not doing that, or not necessarily doing that. It's occasionally you might be doing that. You might be aligned with moral law, but if you're following orders instead of following your conscience, then the chances are that sooner or later, and in a lot of cases it's sooner, you're going to be doing things. Well, in fact, your conscience is long gone. Because it's irrelevant, because all you do is follow the order. So why you don't even need to engage your conscience. You don't need to think about it. And this is the problem. This is like really the heart, the sort of root of the whole problem. And of course, just to kind of skip through a few things. I think one of the roots of this, I mean, we've talked about education and parenting, but I think there's the deepest root of all of this, and this is something I really hope we're going to talk about more in the future, which is about self-esteem, and really self-hatred, self-loathing. And this has been identified by Mark Passio as like the root of this, and I concur with that. I think that's really something that I I can acknowledge in myself that I see that, and I think it's deeply ingrained in us as a species, that and or perhaps not inherent in us as a species, but it's so within the culture that we just don't think we're good enough, and so it's so difficult to engage conscience and to go against the tide, and because we're so caught up in ego, we think, well, if my conscience is telling me to not follow the order, then it's easier to give in to the sorry, if my higher self is telling me to not follow the order, if my alignment with true morality is telling me to not follow the order, the ego is threatened by that, because it's going against the tribe, it's going against the authority figure. All of the fear comes in, the fear of rejection from the tribe, and the fear of punishment, etc., etc. So all of this is really driven at a very, very, very deep psychological level, so deep that it's like murky, it's really hard to perceive, and it's so pervasive. It's like the base layer of psychology that runs through everyone. It's not, can I say everyone? No, but the 99% of us, I think have this like underlying deep sense of like needing to fit in, needing to like judge how we are doing spiritually by this kind of external validification, basically, rather than following the higher self, because the higher self is going to take you against the tide, and it's scary. And so this kind of fear is a real driving kind of factor. And obviously when we have, we all saw this in the deadly pandemic, that people became very quickly like I go into shops, and it's funny, local shops, and I kind of have strange relationships with people, because I'm like, yeah, I remember when you were kind of being a bit funny a few years ago. You seemed to become a bit of an order follower, didn't you? And now you're like smiley and everything's all fine. But people are quite happy to fall, but it's like, well, when you think about it, it's like, well, it is driven by fear. It's not, the whole dynamic is driven by fear. And ultimately, the base level of that fear is of kind of worthlessness, I think, so those are a few things I wanted to put in. Oh, and just one other thing, it was just to reflect on something you said, Jared, about this people having a right to believe. This is a really interesting question, which I'm fascinated by. Recently, there's been a bit of dialogue about it on some of the Telegram groups, about this idea, which you could be phrased, is there a right to be wrong? That's a kind of simplistic way of thinking about it. And, I think it's a really interesting question, because the problem with being wrong is that it does have effects. It has effects in your behavior, and it has effects ultimately on the wider reality that is created. So we do have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to understand moral reality and spiritual reality. And if you have that capacity and you don't use it, can that be said to be a right, that you possess? So that's an interesting, and it's a kind of bit of a side note, but just wanted to respond to that. And just to note
something real quick, because I think people can answer this.
Sorry, Eric, can I just mention? Sorry, we're just coming up to an hour.
We're just
coming up to an hour, so if we sort of head towards like wrapping it up, but yeah, come in.
Yeah, just I'm not even going to put myself on the big screen. people can answer this question in regards to like, do we have a right to believe fill in the blank? We just need to ask ourselves, does that belief lead to harm upon other people, or even does it even perpetuate, immorality, that kind of stuff? So yeah, I didn't want to skip Yvonne's turn. Yeah, definitely appreciate your points, Jared and Nemo. Yeah, and Yvonne. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Going on.
Yeah, that was really interesting, Nemo, talking about the self-esteem and self-worth. That most interesting that what happened in the lockdown, that how they really boosted in the collective consciousness, how the professions that are mostly not doing us any good are like the order followers, say like the medical profession, how they really pumped up in our collective consciousness, like like the I don't know, the pots and pans and all that. So that really did reinforce that kind of industry is something to really aspire to. That they're the be all and end all. What did they call them? The ones that are allowed to go out in the streets. Essential workers.
Yeah.
Essential workers. They were really put on a high pedestal. And I'm noticing around me that, particularly in this country, I'm not sure what it's like in other countries, but what is being kind of planned for our imminent future, those type of industries they seem to be the kind of industries that are going to be the ones left standing when all the shops are gone. And all the other industries don't seem to be as important. But yeah, so I don't know, it just stimulated that in me, Nemo, about the self-esteem. Yeah, it's really quite shocking to think that all the other things out there that we could be doing, say like alternative medicine or alternative types of school systems, how they're not seen as any value anymore. I wonder if it would be really interesting to for us that are aware of these things. Maybe we do have a responsibility to maybe start creating things for when these order followers realize that there is actually an alternative, and they don't have to, when those questions come up within themselves, that there's somewhere for them to go. Maybe there is time, maybe there is a need for it. I'll think about it. It's something that's I'm left thinking with. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to just say that thank you, Derek, for that very, very important, nuanced distinction between nobody has a right to be wrong as long as that wrong initiates harm over somebody else. So what I'm talking about, of course, is somebody who has a belief that, say, a vaccine is going to be good for them, which I would call ignorance, but they would say it's not. So we're talking about the nuanced difference between an opinion or a belief system which leads to self-harm. They have a right to harm themselves, but they never have a right to be wrong and harm other people when that wrong of being wrong leads to harm to somebody else. So thank you, Derek, for that very important distinction. And the last thing that I wanted to say for me anyways, was I would love to, in the future at some point, do a little game show called What's That Violation, where it's kind of like Hollywood Squares. I don't know if you guys ever saw that one, and then we have the order follower in the center of the square. And then they're given like an envelope or something, however, but the envelope reads, you have to evict so and so, one of the other squares. And then we have the contestants, right, of natural law around, and they. So it says on the order follower gets an order, and the order says you have to evict Yvonne from their home for not paying their property taxes, and then Yvonne gets the opportunity to list
Stop
all of the
triggering
ways.
me. Stop triggering me.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I would just anyways, just an idea to throw out there for some future show or whatever. It would be fun. Love you guys. That's all I got.
Yeah, it sounds good. It sounds good. We just need to get an order follower to be prepared to come in and take the questions.
Yeah. All right, I'll just finish up because Nemo, you mentioned something and Yvonne of just how like since the dawning of the Rona during the lockstep time and whatever places were open and stuff, and even just like way after the fact. I remember I was in San Francisco like 2022. You know, there's nothing that the government's saying people have to do this for businesses to be open, whatever, and that's following government orders and stuff. And it was cool to see some places, especially mom and pop places, not, of course, corporate entities weren't gonna disobey, or what I mean. But in proper acts of rebellion, folks were like, no, like people can come in without a fucking mask and whatever the hell, and like we're not stamping people's little health cards to make sure that they followed orders of getting a nasal swab or whatever the fuck test that leads to not pleasant things. Anyways, I was joking around and they took it hella personally, and I kind of forgot of how much of a hermit I can be, and like just how out of touch I was. But I was like trying to go into a bookstore in San Francisco in like one of the cool hippie areas. Well, it fucking used to be. Thanks a lot, modernity and motherfucking techie town takeover with Silicon Valley. You hear a lot about that in Cali, but I was like, they wanted me to, hey, you got to put a mask on if you want to come in here. It's like, what are you talking about? There's no laws about this anymore. What's going on, y'all? He's like, no, you got to do it because it's store policy and this and that. And I was like, man, you guys are worse than the government. It's just another thing of the mini me Satanism, monkey see, monkey do, people policing other people. And unfortunately with the inverted shadow ego stuff, people get a dopamine hit off of it. They like that, some of like the power hungry people, you see the managers that act like dicks and want to micromanage, and helicopter parents and that kind of stuff, of just like going off of this power trip, and they're feeding off of that energy of other people. It seems it's fucking parasitic, so folks really need to extract themselves from these things that are perpetuating harm and coercion and duress upon other people, following these fucking bullshit orders. It's not helping humanity, and people think they're actually part of the solution when they're fucking not. They fell into the Hegelian dialectic, the problem reaction solution that was manufactured way the fuck before these events actually happened, right? So a lot of things to consider, and we need to warm up the hearts to get past the pole ice and really reach the 33rd degree, even taking it beyond Freemasonry, thinking about Jacob's ladder, 33rd vertebrae, really get the crown chakra properly enlightened and aligned with within the pillars of masculine, feminine. Masculine is self-defense, and feminine do no harm. It can be so simply stated, yet to embody these things and act upon them in real time and have that part of your daily fucking life is a totally different level. And people need to really integrate these things beyond just talking about it and learning about it. And we all understand people are on different degrees, but at least taking steps towards that, and steps away from the coercion, and following these orders, and just becoming more consciously aware of them, so we can flip the script on all these things. And I'm thinking about more of what Dan Arnold talks about when he's speaking directly to his former colleagues in the police force and all this stuff. So imagine having those powerful allies on our side finally, to really properly serve and protect or whatever, right? And they don't need a fucking badge or government official label to back that up. People are doing these things out of the goodness of their hearts, especially men that are really trying to embody that sacred masculine of self-defense and uphold what's right in the midst of all these fucking wrongdoings that are going on a daily fucking basis. So I commend folks that are on that path work and trying to do the right thing. Whether it be male and female, we're in this together. We need the warrior and the warrioress, in proper stride towards these things. So yeah, thanks for listening out there.
Thanks, Derek, and thanks everyone. I think it's been a really great show. There's just one point I wanted to come. It's a little bit of a tangent on the topic, but this thing about beliefs is just about there's a problem, as I see it, with that, with the trying to think of it so simplistically in terms of principles about a belief, whether a belief leads to harm. Because if billions of people believe in statism, for example, they're not necessarily, the harm, the belief and the harm, there's layers of separation. It's kind of quite hard to really be clear about how the cause leads to the effect, So yeah, that's a problem with that. I think that is a question. It's an ongoing question for me. But yes, there you have next week's show, statism, and perfectly leads on from this topic, I think, because without order followers, you can't really keep a state going, I don't think. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can't. So statism is another massive topic for us to tackle.
Oh yeah, I forgot one main thing, and it's kind of, for all the Christians out there, don't forget, order followers killed Jesus. It has been written, and
Yeah. So yes, statism next week. Hope you'll join us for that. That's going to be another great discussion, another huge topic. One of the biggest topics to really consider. One of the biggest hidden religions, I would say, in my view. People never think in terms of it as people don't know what it means. It's so hidden, and they're so enamored by it, and they're so immersed in it as a conceptual framework that they don't think of it as a belief system. They think of it as part of reality. So that's going to be a really big one. I think I'd really, recommend you join us for that. And it follows on perfectly, as I said, from this topic. So, if you've been watching, if you like what we do, please do all the things, comment, like, and subscribe, and share this, and come back next week, and we'll keep going, hopefully keep improving at doing what we're doing. And we've got so many topics to keep covering that every week I think this is it, this is the central one, this is what it's all about, and I'm like, oh no, but there's next week's. So I think we're doing great stuff here, and I hope you think so too. We're going to head back over to Telegram now and continue talking. you can come and join us there if you like. The link is in the description. It's also on the screen right now. If you can use a QR code. And I'm also going to mention if the dates are on the funnel. I can't remember the dates. Derek, what are the dates for the Freedom Under Natural Law?
The 22nd. So we got about 4.5 weeks for that coming up.
Okay, so this is a online conference, free online conference coming up in 2-3 weeks. 22nd, of February, and highly recommend that. It's free. You can learn so much about all of these subjects. Lots of different speakers. You're bound to find, a
Chris
few.
Nelson too.
Chris Nelson, yeah. And a friend of the show. And thanks to everyone commenting. And I think that's all I need to say in terms of housekeeping. So thank you so much. Until next time, I'm Nemo Jones, reporting for Beauty. And I look forward to seeing you all next time on Europa Natural Law.